Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. On this series, we are shining a light on an unresolvable problem for astrophysicists: the challenge of explaining unimaginably powerful electromagnetic emissions and energies in a universe in which electricity causes nothing. In our first 3 episodes, we explored this question through our discussion of the stupendous magnetic and filamentary structures seen all throughout the visible universe. The features are neither predicted nor explained in gravity-centric cosmology, but they are the expected features of an electric universe. Fantastic electromagnetic phenomena are increasingly recognized with each passing year. From the powerful electric fields and supersonic plasma jets detected on our own Earth, to the mysterious electron acceleration in Jupiter's aurora, and even tremendous electric currents measured in galactic jets. Yet standard astronomy still holds to theories in which mechanical and kinetic processes, collisions, explosions, gravitational collapse, heating, and shock waves produce the measured electrical effects. But it cannot be a coincidence that ever finer technological data only increases astrophysicists' expressions of amazement and perplexity. In this episode, we will explain why the discovery of, quote, giant light bulbs in space is the 4th of 10 reasons why the universe is electric. The Fermi bubbles. It is one of a growing list of astounding mysteries that demand entirely new theoretical pathways. For over 7 years, astronomers have struggled to explain the presence of the so-called Fermi bubbles, giant structures emitting powerful gamma rays that stretch for tens of thousands of light years above and below the Milky Way's spiral disk. Both the structure's mind-boggling size and energetic emissions appear to pose intractable problems for astrophysicists. Astronomers using the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope discovered the so-called bubbles in 2010. The energetic lobes emanating from the Milky Way's center have been a source of extreme puzzlement ever since. The 2014 Phys.org article, "Despite extensive analysis, Fermi bubbles defy explanation," outlines the mystery as follows. The outlines of the bubbles are quite sharp, and the bubbles themselves glow in nearly uniform gamma rays over their colossal surfaces, like 30,000 light-year tall incandescent bulbs screwed into the center of the galaxy. Their size is another puzzle. The farthest reaches of the Fermi bubbles boast some of the highest energy gamma rays, but there's no discernible cause for them that far from the galaxy. As we outlined in our recent Space News episode, does gravity cause lightning in space? It seems almost beyond belief that astrophysicists can only visualize mechanical and kinetic processes, even when observing the unmistakable signatures of electrical discharge phenomena. The aforementioned Phys.org report poses the question, what blew the bubbles? As if air is being expelled from the galactic center and filling a balloon-like fabric in the vacuum of space. One theoretical possibility investigators have proposed is that a tremendous population of giant stars all exploded at roughly the same time for some reason, somehow forming the gamma ray bubbles. As noted in the Phys.org report, another ad hoc theory for the, quote, bubbles is that they, quote, could have been created by huge jets of accelerated matter blasting out from the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. More recently, in 2017, astronomers claimed that a so-called giant snack several million years ago by the hypothetical black hole believed to be at Sagittarius A produced the energy that created the bubbles. These scientists may have forgotten that the supposed black hole had the opportunity for another, quote, snack when the gas cloud G2 made its long-anticipated closest approach in 2014. Apparently, the imagined gravitational monster was not hungry, leaving the gas cloud intact to the amazement of astronomers around the world. We again note the irony of scientists looking to colossal gravity to explain stupendous electromagnetic phenomena. In this case, no less than, quote, incandescent bulbs screwed into the center of our galaxy. As we've reported several times recently, the stupendous electric current in a galactic jet, estimated at 10 to the 18th power amps, or the equivalent to 1 trillion bolts of lightning, has been measured by radio astronomers. And the seemingly unfathomable discovery of radio jets in numerous galaxies in a distant region of space, all spinning in the same direction, will never be explained by black hole proponents. As we've also discussed several times recently, in the electric universe, an ultra-high density energy storage phenomenon called a plasmoid is at the core of the Milky Way, a kind of load in the galactic electrical circuit, rather like a rechargeable battery. In a galactic circuit, electrical power flows inward along the spiral arms, lighting the stars as it goes, and is concentrated and stored in the central plasmoid. When the plasmoid reaches a threshold density, it discharges, usually along the galaxy's spin axis. This process has been replicated in the laboratory with the plasma focus device. The most seemingly puzzling feature of the bubbles, the presence of the most intense gamma rays at the outer edges of the bubbles, at the farthest distance from the galactic center, is explicable and indeed predictable in the electrical interpretation. The father of plasma cosmology, Hannes Alfvén, proposed that a plasma formation called a double layer should be classified as a discrete celestial object, and that explosions of double layers could be the source of gamma ray bursts and mysterious X-ray emissions. A double layer, or what is known as a Langmuir sheath, forms between plasma regions of different properties. It's a complete mystery to astrophysicists why the most intense gamma rays should be at the outer edges of the bubbles. Yet in the electrical interpretation, the edges of the bubbles delineate the boundary of the galactic plasma environment and that of deep space. A double layer only exists where there is an electric current flowing through space plasma. In this case, the double layer at the bubble's edge would be like a giant spherical plate capacitor, with positive charge on one plate and negative charge on the other. Charged particles are accelerated across the double layer, generating electromagnetic radiation, which can include X-rays and gamma rays. The double layer acts as a boundary effect, dissipating electrical energy in a thin layer. Plasma scientist Dr. Anthony Peratt wrote in his book, Physics of the Plasma Universe, X-ray and gamma ray sources are likely to have their radiative energy supplied by electrical currents. While astronomers continue to ascribe the bubbles to a mysterious blast or eruption event millions of years ago, another important feature of the bubbles completely defies this notion, while affirming the electrical interpretation. In 2013, in the journal Nature, scientists reported the observation of, quote, two giant, linearly polarized radio lobes containing 3 ridge-like substructures emanating from the galactic center. The lobes each extend about 60 degrees in the galactic bulge, closely corresponding to the Fermi bubbles, and are permeated by strong magnetic fields of up to 15 microgauss. These extremely powerful magnetic fields follow closely the directions of the ridges which wind around the flow of energy, as we must find if the ridges in fact represent electrical currents. Critically, the width of the ridges is remarkably constant, at about 300 parsecs. Like the consistent width of star-forming filaments, the constant width of the bubble's ridges is the unmistakable hallmark of lightning. Collisions, explosions, eruptions, geysers, shock waves, heating. Like countless other stupendous electromagnetic phenomena in the cosmos, these kinetic and mechanical mechanisms will never explain the spectacular Fermi bubbles. But why should it be surprising that electricity is actually the source of so-called giant light bulbs in space? The celestial surprises will surely continue until the light bulb of new understanding begins to flicker in the minds of astronomers, illuminating for them our electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info.
Just because you pay less with Groupon doesn't mean you get
Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. On this series, we are shining a light on an unresolvable problem for astrophysicists: the challenge of explaining unimaginably powerful electromagnetic emissions and energies in a universe in which electricity causes nothing. In our first 3 episodes, we explored this question through our discussion of the stupendous magnetic and filamentary structures seen all throughout the visible universe. The features are neither predicted nor explained in gravity-centric cosmology, but they are the expected features of an electric universe. Fantastic electromagnetic phenomena are increasingly recognized with each passing year. From the powerful electric fields and supersonic plasma jets detected on our own Earth, to the mysterious electron acceleration in Jupiter's aurora, and even tremendous electric currents measured in galactic jets. Yet standard astronomy still holds to theories in which mechanical and kinetic processes, collisions, explosions, gravitational collapse, heating, and shock waves produce the measured electrical effects. But it cannot be a coincidence that ever finer technological data only increases astrophysicists' expressions of amazement and perplexity. In this episode, we will explain why the discovery of, quote, giant light bulbs in space is the 4th of 10 reasons why the universe is electric. The Fermi bubbles. It is one of a growing list of astounding mysteries that demand entirely new theoretical pathways. For over 7 years, astronomers have struggled to explain the presence of the so-called Fermi bubbles, giant structures emitting powerful gamma rays that stretch for tens of thousands of light years above and below the Milky Way's spiral disk. Both the structure's mind-boggling size and energetic emissions appear to pose intractable problems for astrophysicists. Astronomers using the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope discovered the so-called bubbles in 2010. The energetic lobes emanating from the Milky Way's center have been a source of extreme puzzlement ever since. The 2014 Phys.org article, "Despite extensive analysis, Fermi bubbles defy explanation," outlines the mystery as follows. The outlines of the bubbles are quite sharp, and the bubbles themselves glow in nearly uniform gamma rays over their colossal surfaces, like 2 30,000 light-year tall incandescent bulbs screwed into the center of the galaxy. Their size is another puzzle. The farthest reaches of the Fermi bubbles boast some of the highest energy gamma rays, but there's no discernible cause for them that far from the galaxy. As we outlined in our recent Space News episode, does gravity cause lightning in space? It seems almost beyond belief that astrophysicists can only visualize mechanical and kinetic processes, even when observing the unmistakable signatures of electrical discharge phenomena. The aforementioned Phys.org report poses the question, what blew the bubbles? As if air is being expelled from the galactic center and filling a balloon-like fabric in the vacuum of space. One theoretical possibility investigators have proposed is that a tremendous population of giant stars all exploded at roughly the same time for some reason, somehow forming the gamma ray bubbles. As noted in the Phys.org report, another ad hoc theory for the, quote, bubbles is that they, quote, could have been created by huge jets of accelerated matter blasting out from the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. More recently, in 2017, astronomers claimed that a so-called giant snack several million years ago by the hypothetical black hole believed to be at Sagittarius A produced the energy that created the bubbles. These scientists may have forgotten that the supposed black hole had the opportunity for another, quote, snack when the gas cloud G2 made its long-anticipated closest approach in 2014. Apparently, The imagined gravitational monster was not hungry, leaving the gas cloud intact to the amazement of astronomers around the world. We again note the irony of scientists looking to colossal gravity to explain stupendous electromagnetic phenomena. In this case, no less than, quote, incandescent bulbs screwed into the center of our galaxy. As we've reported several times recently, the stupendous electric current in a galactic jet, estimated at 10 to the 18th power amps, or the equivalent to 1 trillion bolts of lightning, has been measured by radio astronomers. And the seemingly unfathomable discovery of radio jets in numerous galaxies in a distant region of space, all spinning in the same direction, will never be explained by black hole proponents. As we've also discussed several times recently, in the electric universe, an ultra-high density energy storage phenomenon called a plasmoid is at the core of the Milky Way, a kind of load in the galactic electrical circuit, rather like a rechargeable battery. In a galactic circuit, electrical power flows inward along the spiral arms, lighting the stars as it goes, and is concentrated and stored in the central plasmoid. When the plasmoid reaches a threshold density, it discharges, usually along the galaxy's spin axis. This process has been replicated in the laboratory with the plasma focus device. The most seemingly puzzling feature of the bubbles, the presence of the most intense gamma rays at the outer edges of the bubbles, at the farthest distance from the galactic center, is explicable and indeed predictable in the electrical interpretation. The father of plasma cosmology, Hannes Alfvén, proposed that a plasma formation called a double layer should be classified as a discrete celestial object, and that explosions of double layers could be the source of gamma ray bursts and mysterious X-ray emissions. A double layer, or what is known as a Langmuir sheath, forms between plasma regions of different properties. It's a complete mystery to astrophysicists why the most intense gamma rays should be at the outer edges of the bubbles. Yet in the electrical interpretation, the edges of the bubbles delineate the boundary of the galactic plasma environment and that of deep space. A double layer only exists where there is an electric current flowing through space plasma. In this case, the double layer at the bubble's edge would be like a giant spherical plate capacitor, with positive charge on one plate and negative charge on the other. Charged particles are accelerated across the double layer, generating electromagnetic radiation, which can include X-rays and gamma rays. The double layer acts as a boundary effect, dissipating electrical energy in a thin layer. Plasma scientist Dr. Anthony Peratt wrote in his book, Physics of the Plasma Universe, X-ray and gamma ray sources are likely to have their radiative energy supplied by electrical currents. While astronomers continue to ascribe the bubbles to a mysterious blast or eruption event millions of years ago, another important feature of the bubbles completely defies this notion, while affirming the electrical interpretation. In 2013, in the journal Nature, scientists reported the observation of, quote, two giant, linearly polarized radio lobes containing 3 ridge-like substructures emanating from the galactic center. The lobes each extend about 60 degrees in the galactic bulge, closely corresponding to the Fermi bubbles, and are permeated by strong magnetic fields of up to 15 microgauss. These extremely powerful magnetic fields follow closely the directions of the ridges which wind around the flow of energy, as we must find if the ridges in fact represent electrical currents. Critically, the width of the ridges is remarkably constant, at about 300 parsecs. Like the consistent width of star-forming filaments, the constant width of the bubble's ridges is the unmistakable hallmark of lightning. Collisions, explosions, eruptions, geysers, shock waves, heating. Like countless other stupendous electromagnetic phenomena in the cosmos, these kinetic and mechanical mechanisms will never explain the spectacular Fermi bubbles. But why should it be surprising that electricity is actually the source of so-called giant light bulbs in space? The celestial surprises will surely continue until the light bulb of new understanding begins to flicker in the minds of astronomers, illuminating for them our electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. 21st century astrophysicists hold to an astounding belief that purely gravitational phenomena are the cause of unfathomably powerful electromagnetic energies and emissions in deep space. Consensus scientific theory maintains that mechanical and kinetic processes, collisions, explosions, gravitational collapse, and heating produce mysterious magnetism, which causes the measured electrical effects. From the extraordinarily densely packed neutrons, which are thought to compose magnetized spinning neutron stars, which produce pulsing radio and X-ray emissions, or supermassive stars going supernova, collapsing into black holes and producing extraordinary gamma-ray bursts, or the nearly infinite compression of matter that is thought to constitute a black hole. These theoretical phenomena have been exhaustively codified through mathematical modeling and supercomputer simulations, and imposing sums of taxpayer money have been spent on the most sophisticated technologies, resulting in tweaks to the models rather than testing alternatives. What experimentalists observe in nature and the laboratory is of secondary importance in gravity-centric cosmology, whose symbol of genius remains the mathematician. No clearer example of this can be seen than in the standard astrophysical interpretation of the largest scale lightning observed in the universe. As we will see, lightning is indeed the only valid interpretation of the spectacular phenomena. In our recent installment of our series, The Top 10 Reasons the Universe is Electric, we discussed the quote, mysterious nature of cosmic jets. From the light-years-long filamentary jets of so-called Herbig-Haro objects, to extragalactic radio jets that stretch for hundreds of thousands of light-years, and even beyond. What mechanism is capable of producing these high-energy jets across such spectacular distances? And what confines the jets and prevents the material from dispersing in the quote, vacuum of space? Astrophysicists have never successfully explained the phenomena, and a new scientific report only underscores the desperate need for new theoretical pathways. On October 16, 2017, the website phys.org reported on the cosmic jet of a quasar that stretches for an incredible 300,000 light-years. The report begins by misrepresenting a popular theory as an unassailable fact. It states, quasars are galaxies with massive black holes at their cores. From this one belief, it seems inevitable that only confusion can follow. The report describes scientists' ongoing struggle to explain the X-ray emissions of the collimated bipolar jets from quasars as follows. Even after more than 2 decades of study, however, there is still no clear conclusion as to the physical mechanism actually responsible for the X-ray emission. On the jet's electrical nature, a vital clue is found in the report's following statement. Both the magnetic field strength and the particle velocities are, remarkably, quite constant all along the length of this jet. Of course, both the constancy of the jet's particle velocities and magnetic field strength are the undeniable hallmarks of lightning. However, since astronomers hold to the unbending belief that electricity causes nothing in space, including unfathomably powerful electrical discharges, the confusion only deepens with ever finer technological data. A perfect example can be seen in a 2015 NASA Hubble report, which describes a so-called shock collision of mysterious knots inside a quote, black hole jet. A Hubble time-lapse video shows the knots in the jet, which form like, quote, pearls on a string. The report begins, when you're blasting through space more than 98% of the speed of light, you may need driver's insurance. Astronomers have discovered for the first time a rear-end collision between 2 high-speed knots of ejected matter. The report continues, Such extragalactic jets are not well understood. They appear to transport energetic plasma in a confined beam from the active nucleus of the host galaxy. The new analysis suggests that shocks produced by collisions within the jet further accelerate particles and brighten the regions of colliding material. Of course, the collimated and knotty form of the jets are the well-documented signatures of electrical discharges in plasma. As we will see as we continue, it is not a coincidence that both stars and galaxies form like pearls on a string, and the plasma filaments connecting galaxies are now a subject of growing scientific investigation. In the electric universe, it is not a supermassive black hole at the center of a galaxy, but a donut-shaped object called a plasmoid, which unlike a black hole has a proven physical reality. In plasma laboratories on Earth, a plasmoid is an ultra-high-density energy storage phenomenon. Electric currents flow equatorially inward to the plasmoid where energy is stored electromagnetically. The electric universe model proposes simply that so much concentrated energy is stored in the galactic plasmoid that it may be the compact source, whose mass is attributed to a hypothetical black hole. As the plasmoid's charge density increases along the axis of the quote donut, it creates the well-known plasma feature called a double layer, which can explode or release energy axially in the form of cosmic jets and other spectacular emissions. The scalability of plasma phenomena is of course paramount in cosmic investigations. The Nobel Prize winner and father of plasma cosmology, Hannes Alfvén, proposed that plasma phenomena can be scaled to an incredible 28 orders of magnitude. In fact, in 1986, Alfvén spoke at a NASA-sponsored conference on the astrophysical role of double layers. He stated, "Double layers in space should be classified as a new type of celestial object. One example is the double radio sources. It is tentatively suggested that X-ray and gamma-ray bursts may be due to exploding double layers." In the aforementioned NASA report, the authors propose that heating and mysterious magnetism are responsible for the jet's velocities and collimation. They state, "One theory is that material falling onto the central object is superheated and ejected along the object's spin axis. Powerful magnetic fields constrain the material into a narrow jet. But of course, superheating alone does not explain the origins and extraordinary velocities of the jets. And why the magnetic field should exist at all to confine the jets remains completely unexplained in standard theory. As we've outlined in many recent episodes, cosmic scale magnetic fields were, until very recently, considered to be, quote, not important in standard astrophysics. So it's not surprising that countless scientific reports in the last decade feature expressions of surprise and perplexity from astronomers who are detecting magnetism everywhere throughout the cosmos. The perplexity must continue until astronomers integrate a simple law of physics. Electric currents produce magnetic fields. Today we are seeing the inevitable confirmation of the electrical nature of cosmic jets. As we've reported previously, in 2011, a team of scientists measured the electric current in the jet shooting from the galaxy 3C303. They estimated the strength of the current at 10 to the 18th power amps, or the equivalent of 1 trillion bolts of lightning. Of course, the team still holds to the theory that a supermassive black hole ultimately produces the spectacular electric current. But as we've also recently reported, at an even greater cosmic scale, it has become undeniable that the electrical cosmic jets have nothing to do with black holes. In 2016, a Royal Astronomical Society press release reported the discovery that, quote, "Supermassive black holes in a region of the distant universe are all spinning out radio jets in the same direction." A lead investigator, Professor Ramil Dave, said of the findings, "This is not obviously expected based on our current understanding of cosmology. It's a bizarre finding." The problem for proponents of black hole theory is that at these incredible cosmic distances, no mechanism exists to affect the directionality of the jets. Unfortunately, rather than pausing to question the very existence of the hypothetical black holes, which have never been observed by anyone, The researchers proposed the ad hoc theory that the spin alignment of the galaxies must have somehow occurred in the early universe, causing the black holes to spin in the same direction. But in the electric universe, such cosmic alignments are in fact predicted and required if the dominant organizational force is electromagnetism. Space, across the vastest cosmic distances, has a substructure of twisted pair current filaments, with stars and galaxies forming along them like pearls on a string, and having their spin axes aligned along their filament. Science discovery continues to confirm this prediction. In 2015, scientists using the Herschel Space Observatory reported the detection in unprecedented detail of filamentary structures throughout the Milky Way galaxy. A phys.org report states of the finding, "One of the key aspects that emerged from these observations is the presence of a filamentary network nearly everywhere in our galaxy's interstellar medium. The picture that is emerging is that these structures are closely linked to the formation of stars," the principal investigator of the survey stated. The greatest surprise was the ubiquity of filaments in these nearby clouds and their intimate connection with star formation. The picture of protostars forming due to gravitational collapse in molecular clouds is now falsified by direct observation. Instead, stars, as well as galaxies, form like pearls on a string, which we must find if the electromagnetic Z-pinch effect is responsible for star formation. The telltale signature of the electric currents that confine the star-forming filaments was also detected in the aforementioned study, the principal investigator said of the finding. These observations reveal that filaments, which may extend to several light years in length, appear to have a universal width of about 1/3 of a light year. This suggests that something fundamental is lurking underneath. As previously stated, the universal width of filaments, which is completely unexpected in standard reasoning, is not coincidental. On Earth, constant width is observed in the most powerful natural electrical discharge phenomenon, lightning. In fact, for many mysterious astrophysical phenomena, it is lightning that works as the most promising natural analog. We then ask the question, if Occam's razor were actually applied in astrophysical circles, would consensus theory remain that gravity is the most likely, that is to say simplest explanation for the undeniable, stupendous electric currents in space? On our own Earth, the phenomena we experience in nature and the laboratory may surely help demystify the ongoing mysteries in our electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. In part 1 of this presentation, physicist Wal Thornhill began his analysis of the recent award of the Nobel Prize in Physics to scientists for their contributions to the so-called detection of gravitational waves. While science media has shown exactly zero skepticism of the gravitational waves pronouncements, Thornhill discussed some of the foundational mathematical problems that preclude the claimed detection of, quote, two black holes colliding and producing ripples in the fabric of space-time. Today, Thornhill explores another fundamental cosmological question, and that is the existence of the required medium for the communication of electromagnetic waves in the, quote, vacuum of space, a medium called the ether.
Physics used to be called natural philosophy in more scientifically productive centuries. So-called modern science is largely bootstrapped technology, built on scientific principles that were around before Einstein. Einstein himself warned that pure mathematics cannot claim to be natural or philosophical, and at the end of his life expressed grave doubts that his work would endure. Meanwhile, his devotees raised him to sainthood, ignored his caution, and became mesmerised by their computer screens and chalkboards covered with inscrutable math symbols. Einstein was a dreamer who largely originated this century-old mathematical mess by imagining perception is reality. That's like saying of someone who is moving away from you that their space is shrinking and their watch is ticking more slowly. But relativity theory allows the departing person to say the same of you. Einstein, with his theory of relativity, removed absolute standards by making length and time rubbery and a matter of arbitrary choice of moving frames of reference, which cannot be equivalent if we are to define energy and mass. Another fundamental error of Einstein's has prevented a more mundane explanation for the chirp signals from LIGO. Einstein discarded the medium for the transmission of waves in a vacuum, called the ether, which is essential for Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism and to explain the dielectric properties of the vacuum. It's impossible to wave nothing. Light must have an electrically polarizable medium, an ether. Having a universal medium discards Einstein's principle of the equivalence of inertial frames of reference and the constancy of the speed of light. Why is this important? Because the huge LIGO vacuum chambers are full of ether and the design assumes the speed of light to be a universal constant. Let's look at LIGO. Weiss devised the approach to gravitational wave detection in 1967 during lesson planning for a relativity course he was teaching at MIT, and I quote, "You'd make a right triangle of objects floating freely in a vacuum," Weiss told his students, according to a 2000 interview. "And we'd send light beams between them and then be able to figure it out. What does the gravitational wave do to the time it takes light to go between these things? Gravitational waves due to merging black holes definitely don't exist. Natural philosophy, physics, suggests simply that a disturbance travelling through the ether inside the 4-kilometre LIGO arms may be one way to produce a chirp signal in the LIGO system. This raises serious questions for the future of science and the usefulness of prize-giving as a motivator. Weiss and Thorne are two of three physicists known as the Troika, the founders of LIGO's giant twin detectors in Livingston, Louisiana and in Hanford, Washington. The third Troika member, Ronald Drever, died on the 7th of March this year. Before Drever's passing in March, the Troika won the $3 million Special Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics, the $500,000 Gruber Foundation Cosmology Prize, the $1.2 million Shaw Prize in Astronomy, and the $1 million Kavli Prize in Astrophysics. These and other Nobel Prize winners of the past have seriously warped our sense of reality. The public will have spent $1.1 billion providing super expensive gadgets to detect the grin of the cosmic Cheshire cat to mathematical gamers posing as physicists. Like the scientists wasting billions of euros on the Large Hadron Collider to find the imaginary Higgs boson, they had to find something to save their credibility. Government-funded, institutionalised big science is not working in the 21st century. The rewards, the lack of critical scrutiny, trust us, we're the experts, and suppression of dissenting voices have to be seriously investigated because we are about to waste a great deal more money. It's reported that the European Space Agency is planning a multi-billion-dollar probe to be launched in about 17 years that would look for gravitational waves from space. Weiss hopes astronomers will learn more about nuclear physics, states of matter, how heavy elements are made, and detect information from, and I quote, "the very moment when the universe came out of nothingness." "We expect surprises," he said. "There has to be surprises." The real surprise is how anyone can claim to be a physicist and say the universe came out of nothingness. That isn't physics. One of the dissenting voices, Dr. Harold Aspden, an outstanding British theoretical physicist, electrical engineer and inventor, wrote, "Until the scientific world recovers its good sense and takes another look at the mysteries of our cosmos with the ether in mind and Einstein ignored, we really have no hope of inspiring future science students and gaining a better understanding of the phenomena which dominate, indeed constitute, our very existence." The galling thing is that the electric universe already has a real model of how gravity works, and it answers simply most of the real questions. We are now testing some of these models experimentally. Perversely, it is found that government funding hinders innovation because research is concentrated on the current preoccupations of those who direct research grants. We rely not on the government but on benefactors and public donations. It's the Renaissance model of doing science. Research has found that science seems to follow the innovation, not the other way around. The practical tinkerers find something, then science is employed to work out why that's what we've found works. The innovative Thunderbolts project is an outstanding example of this approach, with the distinguishing feature of having a coherent cosmology to direct the tinkerers. What hope is there for the future? History shows that paradigm shifts come from individuals, often from outside the affected discipline. Today, those in organisations that have access to science journals and the media, and who have the most to lose from a paradigm shift, suppress such claims or attempt to assimilate the ideas surreptitiously. Nobel Prizes have notoriously been awarded to those insiders who develop an outsider's idea. How can we find these innovators outside the academic system? Chris Reeve suggests in his online Controversies in Science, which I highly recommend, this is a world where we are dependent upon the experts for any announcement of our new paradigm. Yet the experts are the very people who stand to lose the most by such an announcement. He then asks the question, what would a paradigm change actually look like? And Chris answers, the correct answer is that, assuming you're not an actual academic, there's no real guarantee that you'd actually see our new paradigm emerging at all. If there was some exciting new scientific era just around the corner, we'd never know it. This, of course, applies to the electric universe paradigm. Chris then offers a solution through a science futures market where people can wager bets on well-crafted, specific, time-limited scientific predictions. Science futures markets have the potential to expose scientific dogma that's become embedded with science journalism. They can help us to identify impending paradigm changes as they reward those who are paying attention sufficiently to understand that the data is deviating from the carefully managed message we get from mainstream science. I wish such a market had been around decades ago, given the success of the many unique specific predictions of the electric universe when measured against the continual surprises for Big Bang cosmology. Instead of cramming heads with facts, we need documentation of science controversies, past and present, to be accessible to the public and teachers so that students can be trained in critical thinking. So-called evidence-based science can then be seen to be special pleading. One scientist's fact can be another's fiction. That's the basis of debunking. Learning this together with the ideas, context and personalities involved in earlier science debates allows one to see what persuaded crucial verdicts in the past and to realise how often those decisions had little to do with the science and more to do with beliefs, politics and influence. Understanding those debates is also perhaps the best way to inspire anyone to participate in science criticism and discovery. There is so much data and so little understanding of that data. We must stop funding and rewarding the religious belief expressed by Galileo that mathematics is the language of God, that the mathematical mind can deduce the true laws of nature, that the mathematical mind alone would lead to true knowledge of reality. Until we do, science remains a religious belief system.
For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. The 2017 Nobel Prize in Physics has been awarded to 3 scientists for their contributions to the so-called observation of gravitational waves. In February of last year, a team working with the LIGO gravitational wave detector announced their discovery. We are told that the instruments detected, quote, ripples in space-time, which were caused by the collision of 2 black holes a billion years ago. This was not the first time such a pronouncement of gravitational waves discovery produced a media firestorm, although the previous claims were later disconfirmed. However, institutional science and science media unite in consensus that the discovery is valid and marks an irrefutable confirmation of Einstein's theory of general relativity. Is the purported detection of gravitational waves actually valid? In part 1 of this 2-part presentation, our chief science advisor, physicist Wal Thornhill, again tackles the question, and he suggests why the signals cannot in fact have anything to do with gravity.
The 2017 Nobel Prize for Physics has been awarded once again to mathematicians. This time it's for decisive contributions to the LIGO detector and the observation of gravitational waves. It seems the inmates are in charge of the asylum. Last month at the Royal Institution, Dr. Jim Baggott, an award-winning science author, lectured on the concept of mass, which is essential for understanding gravity. He declared that theoretical physicists have a dirty little secret. He explained, "The mission of a theoretical physicist trying to work out the nature of substance and elementary particles is to get the maths to work out correctly and consistent with what's gone on before. So we're discussing mathematics, not physics. And of course, what's gone on before is that mathematicians raised Einstein's general relativity to the status of scripture, while that theory ignores the substance of stars and planets that exhibit mass and gravity. So the theory has no physical basis whatsoever. It depends instead on a warped view of reality." Unsurprisingly, Jim Baggott failed to physically define mass or explain the mysterious equivalence of inertial mass and gravitational mass. The dirty little secret is that mathematics is the foreign language of physics. Few claim to understand the language, and the Math to English dictionary is woefully incomplete because the editors, the natural philosophers, were sacked a century ago. So key words like mass and energy are physically undefined, and infinities are reified, which allows a photon to exist having no mass but carrying energy. The shocking truth is that E equals mc squared is not physically understood. It seems physics is a foreign discipline for mathematicians also. Phys.org asks, "What is space-time?" and answers, "Space-time is the mind-bending, four-dimensional way astronomers see the universe. It melds the one-way march of time with the more familiar 3 dimensions of space." But how can astronomers see anything in 4 dimensions? And point me in the direction that time is marching. Lumping together the concept of locations in 3 dimensions, that is space, with the numbers on clocks, that is time, cannot constitute a physical fabric. Space-time is a meaningless concatenation of words. It isn't physics. As a result, translations of theoretical mathematics into plain English have become meaningless, New Age nonsense. Mathematics isn't physics. When it comes to experiment, how can our prize winners claim an infinitesimal signal is a hypothetical gravitational effect allegedly caused by objects, black holes, that have never been observed? How can our prize winners be so specific about the masses of 2 merging black holes? A black hole has never been observed. If a theorist is unable to discover real objects, which cause the observed effects, it is unscientific, indeed it is fraudulent, to invent unreal objects and present them as a factual discovery of the cause of those effects. Gravitational waves and black holes are merely mathematical speculations with fatal problems, which I'll address in a moment. And how can you have decisive contributions from a detector when the effect is a displacement of less than the width of a proton over 4 kilometres? The experiment is a textbook example of pathological science. Matching signal patterns from a huge database of 250,000 theoretical templates of alleged binary black hole collisions, hoping one might coincide with the infinitesimal recorded signals. Critical to the detection algorithm is that the alleged gravitational waves are assumed to travel at the speed of light. So there is a time delay expected between similar signal patterns from separate LIGO detectors. But Newton's theory, which is used successfully to navigate the solar system, has gravity operating instantly. Time doesn't appear in his law of gravity. Newton's gravity acts like a rigid rod between celestial bodies, where the tug at one end is felt immediately at the other end. This is actually essential for the clockwork regularity of the planetary system, but it's never considered because the effect exceeds Einstein's speed limit of light waves. What light has to do with the force of gravity is not explained. Meanwhile, the phys.org report states, gravitational waves stretch space in one direction and compress it in a transverse direction. How Einstein's gravity, which does away with force, manages to allegedly stretch and compress a four-dimensional geometric concept of empty space is unexplained. The important thing to note is that the signals did not arrive at the same time in each LIGO detector, so the LIGO signals were not caused by gravity. More damning, though, is that the physical implications of black hole theory seem not to be understood by any academic. Steve Crothers addressed this issue in his Electric Universe 2017 presentation. Amongst other things, he points out that the black hole universe is infinite and not expanding, while the Big Bang universe is finite and expanding. The black hole universe is eternal, while the Big Bang universe is 13.8 billion years old. The black hole universe is asymptotically flat, while the Big Bang universe is not asymptotically anything. A black hole universe contains only one mass, while the Big Bang universe contains many masses. So we, as observers, cannot exist in a black hole universe. And two black holes orbiting each other in the Big Bang universe is impossible. Yet we are led to believe that 4 binary pairs of black holes have been positively identified and accurately weighed through vanishingly tiny chirp signals. To drive home the sheer nonsense of black hole theory, Steve itemises its properties. A black hole has finite mass concentrated at its singularity. The singularity has zero volume and infinite density. The black hole has no gravitational force, only space-time curvature. There is infinite curvature at the singularity, which means infinite gravity. Steve says, let's think about that. A finite mass is located in zero volume. It has infinite density. It has infinite gravity. Do you think any such thing exists? It's simply assumed by the originators of black hole gravitational collapse theory that matter is uncharged and infinitely compressible. It is also simply assumed that the gravitational equations and the universal constant of gravitation, g, are universal and can be applied inside the Earth and stars without change. There is no mention of the matter in those bodies, which is the origin of their mass and gravity. Meanwhile, their partners in mathematical fraud, particle theorists, have decided that normal matter has no intrinsic mass, which further obscures the origin of gravity and our understanding of the universe. It's a self-serving myth that Einstein's mathematics predicts black holes. The originators of black hole theory in 1965, including Thorne, chose not to mention that Einstein's October 1939 paper, which they refer to, concludes with, the Schwarzschild singularity, the term black hole had not been introduced then, does not appear for the reason that matter cannot be concentrated arbitrarily, and this is due to the fact that otherwise the constituting particles would reach the velocity of light. Einstein showed mathematically that black holes cannot form gravitationally for the same reason that stars and planets cannot, because the infalling matter begins to circle the centre of mass until the centrifugal force balances the gravitational force. The observational evidence now shows that stars and planets are formed by the powerful electromagnetic force produced in electromagnetic pinches along cosmic lightning filaments in molecular clouds. Gravitational collapse theory is now discredited by direct observation.
In the following episode, Thornhill suggests that a fundamental error of Einstein's has prevented scientists from considering a mundane explanation for the chirps LIGO has detected. And he explores in detail the promising theoretical alternatives that await in the electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. Comet science stands at a crossroads, with enormous implications for the future of astronomy, institutional science as a whole, and perhaps the entire culture in more ways than might be imagined. In our last episode, we explored recent comet discoveries that provide the final, definitive refutation of the more than half-century-old dirty snowball comet hypothesis. Since the mid-20th century, institutional science has subscribed to the belief that comets are fluffy aggregates of ice and dust that formed through condensation or accretion in the solar system's infancy 4.5 billion years ago. But for decades, the chief principals of the Thunderbolts Project have proposed a radically different theory of comets. Comets are not billions of years old, nor are they snowballs of ice and dust. Rather, comets, as well as asteroids and meteoroids, were excavated from planets and moons through high-energy electrical discharges, or interplanetary thunderbolts. This theory has always predicted dry and rocky comet nuclei, which should be burnt black, covered with extremely fine dust and rubble, and displaying distinctly planetary features. Every space mission to date that has imaged a comet nucleus has dramatically affirmed the electric comet theory. Scientists have marveled over comet nuclei that appear indistinguishable from asteroids, and have without exception displayed a stunning lack of the abundant surface ice that standard theory predicted. For 3 years on this series, we have reported on the amazing revelations from the ESA's Rosetta mission to the Comet 67P. Despite insurmountable pre-existing evidence to the contrary, mission scientists had expected the comet nucleus to resemble a snowball of ice and dust. As we showed in the previous episode, recently released close-up images of the nucleus could not more dramatically refute this expectation. Numerous forms of stratified rock appear stunningly obvious on the comet. Again, we compare them to planetary examples, such as those on our own Earth. Of course, comet scientists never predicted the feature, and how could they? Stratification is thought to result from planetary geological processes, such as wind and water erosion shaping sedimentary rocks over millions of years, or volcanic magma or lava producing igneous rocks. In standard comet theory, as a comet approaches the sun, comet activity, including the production of the familiar coma and tail, is thought to result from sublimating surface and near-surface volatiles and outgassing. Sublimating snowballs do not produce features indistinguishable from the desert regions of rocky planets. As we reported many times previously on this series, other uniquely planetary features on the comet include sand dunes, wind-streaked rocks, mesas, and of course, we see the sharp-edged cliffs, giant boulders, and endless fields of rubble that we must find if the comet was in fact torn from a planet. In the previous episode, we also reported on another devastating discovery for standard comet theory. Scientists' observation of a comet that has become active at the incredible distance of 1.5 billion miles from the Sun, or 16 astronomical units. Comet ice is not supposed to sublimate at distances beyond just 3 astronomical units. Yet in the official NASA Hubble press release, we see that neither this discovery nor the vast library of evidence disconfirming the dirty snowball hypothesis have had any effect at all on NASA's view of comets. The press release states, A solitary frozen traveler has been journeying for millions of years toward the heart of our planetary system. The wayward vagabond, a city-sized snowball of ice and dust called a comet, was gravitationally kicked out of the Oort cloud, its frigid home at the outskirts of the solar system. As we also noted previously, it's a bizarre paradox that a lead Rosetta scientist, Dr. Nicholas Thomas, said in 2015. Rosetta has blown the dirty snowball idea out of the water. And yet, the Rosetta team has collectively held steadfastly to the standard fiction of icy comets that formed 4.5 billion years ago. Of course, the required surface ice was never observed on the comet. In January of 2016, the team summarized their findings as follows. The great majority of ice is believed to come from under the comet's crust, and very few examples of exposed water ice have been found on the surface. Here, as in the aforementioned Hubble report, we see an inexplicable devotion to falsified theory. It seems fitting that the language in an official scientific report includes the word believed. To describe the small patches of water ice on the comet as, quote, exposed, implies a faith that an invisible reservoir of ice exists underneath the comet's desiccated, rocky exterior. This was the logic that scientists employed who have taken to referring to comets as, quote, deep-fried ice cream. Yet how one gets stratified rock in ice cream, be it deep-fried or not, remains mysterious. And here we see again a disturbing disconnect between science theory and science discovery. Recent discoveries in planetary science affirm that continued conjectures about subsurface comet ice are not necessary. Scientists today are attempting to explain why the planet Mercury has a surprising abundance of ice in craters at its north pole. One theory that scientists are proposing was summarized in the September 19, 2017 blog of the American Geophysical Union. It states, Mercury's exposure to solar winds containing protons could have combined with oxygen and hydrogen on the planet to form water. For several years, scientists have employed the same reasoning to explain the discovery of water on our own moon. We suggest that a similar process may be responsible for the scant ice seen on desiccated, rocky comet nuclei. Yet another reason to end speculation about invisible subsurface ice. Other obstacles remain before institutional science will likely entertain any real alternative theories of comets and comet origins. One is the detection of the signature of water molecules in cometary coma, which comet scientists have always interpreted as proof of sublimating ices. But long before the discovery of an active comet at 1.5 billion miles from the Sun, ample reason existed for scientists to question such an interpretation. Comet 67P was not the first comet to puzzle scientists with its ironically overactive, quote, water output. In June of 2014, the ESA reported the surprisingly early detection of water, quote, sweating off of the dry, rocky comet. They wrote, ESA's Rosetta spacecraft has found that Comet 67P is releasing the equivalent of 2 small glasses of water into space every second, even at a cold 583 million kilometers from the Sun. The principal investigator of Rosetta's microwave instrument stated, we always knew we would see water vapor outgassing from the comet, but we were surprised at how early we detected it. But on a body that is covered with stratified rock, where is the water coming from? A theoretical path that comet scientists have yet to explore is complex cometary electrochemistry. In recent years, Thunderbolt's colleague Dr. Franklin Anariba, a specialist in electrochemistry, has been presenting his thesis on comet water production by electrochemical means. In a 5-part Space News presentation in 2015, Dr. Anariba proposed that a process of electron stripping releases O2, OH, and other chemical species into the cometary coma. The discovery of an electron density in the vicinity of the 67P nucleus is therefore important. It can mean that the chemical O2 can absorb a negative charge through charge exchange, which is then followed by a process called protonation via solar wind at the comet. Water formation can then be explained via a series of pathways, as Dr. Anariba has outlined. Electrochemistry may also be the cause of the production of rich gases that comets have produced at a great variety of distances from the Sun, as Dr. Anariba has also discussed. And it can account for the completely unexpected detection of molecular oxygen at Comet 67P. Yet another reason why no basis remains to suggest that comets are 4.5 billion years old. As reported in India's national magazine Frontline, the detection of O2 was unexpected. All the primordial oxygen molecules, which would have been there in a comet's evolution around 4.6 billion years ago, should have disappeared by now. The Rosetta discovery of O2 in 67P is an astrophysical enigma. In fact, in March of this year, in a scientific paper published in the journal Nature Communications, the authors essentially propose that water molecules coming off a comet become electrically charged. Then the solar wind accelerates the charged molecules back to the comet's surface. There they pick up an oxygen atom from the surface from materials such as sand, forming the detected O2. The electrical theory of comets is based on sound scientific foundations, and nothing in the theory is at odds with discovery. In the electric universe, most comet activity results from comets moving through regions of changing electrical potential. Comets that spend most of their time in the outer reaches of the solar system develop a, quote, negative charge with respect to their environment. As they move toward the Sun's more positively charged domain, they can experience voltage spikes in their dynamic plasma environment and begin to discharge electrically. The Sun's electromagnetic influence is now being shown through science discovery to be far more vast throughout the solar system than standard theory has ever imagined. In 2016, the Cassini spacecraft made the surprising discovery of so-called magnetic ropes that stretch nearly 900 million miles from the Sun to the gas giant Saturn, and interact with the planet in a manner similar to the Birkeland currents that are now known to produce Earth's auroras. Comets can also become active when passing through any more positively charged region of space, including when encountering the vast magnetotail of a planet. This theory can explain much comet activity, which has only proved baffling to mainstream theorists, including comets that have disintegrated or exploded at impossibly vast distances from the Sun, and the astonishing electrical energies measured when comets have closely approached planets, including Shoemaker-Levy 9 at Jupiter, and comet sighting Spring at Mars. This, of course, explains why comet activity can occur at distances from the Sun, where invisible, hypothetical ices cannot sublimate. Another obstacle for comet scientists is a faith in their measurements of a comet's density. After all, said measurements at 67P would suggest that the images do in fact lie, and underneath the obviously rocky surface is a more fluffy, icy interior. However, investigators might have been given pause shortly after the landing of the Philae probe on the comet nucleus. After the lander bounced and rolled into the shade of a towering rocky cliff, the team attempted to hammer the probe into the comet's soil, but the hammer was bested by the comet's obviously rocky composition. The ESA describes the event as follows. The probe then started to hammer itself into the subsurface, but was unable to make more than a few millimeters of progress, even at the highest power level of the motor. Similar surprises awaited NASA's Stardust Next team when they re-imaged the surface of Comet Tempel 1 after the Deep Impact mission fired a copper projectile into the comet nucleus. The team found that the projectile's impact crater was nowhere near as dramatic as expected, indicating a much tougher surface than the comet's density measurements would seem to indicate. But incredibly, the team proposed the projectile did in fact leave a dramatic crater, which somehow achieved a miraculous self-healing. They hypothesized that material exploded off of the comet at tremendous velocities, and then somehow fell back down in the comet's near-zero gravity to refill the crater. As Space.com reported in 2011, Tempel 1's man-made crater partially healed itself as the ejecta settled and refilled part of the depression. The ramifications of this problem reach far beyond comet science and affect all of cosmology. For decades, the chief science advisor to the Thunderbolts project, Wal Thornhill, has argued that measurements of an object's density cannot be accurate if one fails to account for the electromagnetic stresses on the body. In 2004, when NASA's Stardust mission imaged another comet, Wilt 2, which also appears indistinguishable from an asteroid. Thornhill wrote, "Density calculations based on gravitational perturbation theory are worthless. Gravity is a weak, dipole electric force between subatomic particles. So the charge distribution in a body affects gravity strongly. Comets are highly charged bodies and will exhibit anomalous gravity. Newton's gravitational constant, g, is a dependent variable. It is dependent on the electrical state of a body." Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson is famously quoted as saying, "The good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it." Those who have followed this series will surely recognize the amazing irony of deGrasse Tyson's statement. In our previous episode, we concluded with the question, is science self-corrective? Apply the question to comet science today, and the answer is self-evident. Yet deGrasse Tyson is correct. A thing is either true or not, and nature has no regard for human beliefs. The repetition of the conjecture of our solar system's 4.5 billion year history does not make it true. The repetition of the conjecture of comets as dirty snowballs does not make it true. The consensus nature of any belief does not make it true. What is the truth about comets? As Galileo Galilei stated, "All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them." We again implore viewers to simply look at the pictures. An easy path of discovery awaits, leading one further into our electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to Thunderbolts. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. Science headlines in September of 2017 have delivered perhaps the final nails in the coffin of the dirty snowball hypothesis of comets, while affirming the predictions of the electric comet theory. So stark are the respective successes and failures of the opposing theories. It raises serious questions, not only about the state of comet science, but also of institutional science as a whole. Our first headline comes from the official website of NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. Scientists enlisted the use of the telescope after discovering a comet between the orbits of Saturn and Uranus. The comet, called C-2017 K2, is historic because it's the farthest inbound comet ever seen that has become active, at an incredible 1.5 billion miles away, or 16 astronomical units. At such a distance from the Sun, the temperatures are minus 440 degrees Fahrenheit on this. Scientists enlisted the use of the telescope after also of institutional science as a whole. Our first headline comes from the official website of NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. Scientists enlisted the use of the telescope after discovering a comet between the orbits of Saturn and Uranus. The comet, called C-2017 K2, is historic because it's the farthest inbound comet ever seen that has become active, at an incredible 1.5 billion miles away, or 16 astronomical units. At such a distance from the Sun, the temperatures are minus 440 degrees Fahrenheit. Comet ice is not supposed to sublimate at distances beyond just 3 astronomical units. Unfortunately, the Hubble press release on this amazing discovery reveals it has had no effect at all on the assumptions behind consensus comet theory. The press release states, "A solitary frozen traveler has been journeying for millions of years toward the heart of our planetary system. The wayward vagabond, a city-sized snowball of ice and dust called a comet, was gravitationally kicked out of the Oort cloud, its frigid home at the outskirts of the solar system. This region is a vast comet storehouse, composed of icy leftover building blocks from the construction of the planets 4.6 billion years ago. Neither the existence of a hypothetical Oort cloud, nor the treasured 4.6 billion year history of our solar system have been proven scientifically. Indeed, as we've reported for 5 years on this series, Countless theory-shattering discoveries have sent scientists searching for entirely new theories of planet and star formation. But perhaps most astounding is the continued description of a comet as a, quote, snowball of ice and dust. That such a description is published in a report on a comet that is active at 1.5 billion miles from the Sun reveals a disturbing disconnect from scientific discovery. Today, it is not merely, quote, alternative theorists such as those in the electric universe community who say that the dirty snowball hypothesis has been falsified. In the last week, the European Space Agency released the last image that was sent by the Rosetta space probe as it crashed into the surface of Comet 67P. Perhaps for the first time, we see the world's largest news outlets discussing comets with no attempt to convince the public that comets are dirty snowballs. Rather, the outlets acknowledge what any human being can see with his or her own eyes. The comet is made of rock, desiccated, stratified, blackened, and strewn with rubble and debris. It is as far from a, quote, dirty snowball as any comet could be. In fact, it was 3 years ago that Rosetta scientist Dr. Nicholas Thomas said Rosetta has blown the dirty snowball idea out of the water. The incredible images from the Rosetta probe affirm the statement beyond any possible doubt. In the last week, the ESA released more than 1,000 images of the 67P nucleus for public download. Let us juxtapose the respective predictive theories of a comet's composition and origins as proposed by official science versus those of the chief principles of the Thunderbolts project. Comet science has maintained for many decades that comets are aggregates of ice and dust that formed through a process of accretion or condensation out in the, quote, Siberia of the solar system. The image on the left is an artistic rendering of the expected surface of a comet prior to the mission to Comet Halley in 1986. On the right is a slightly modified depiction, which Rosetta scientists expected to find at 67P. In contrast, the electric comet theory, as proposed by the Thunderbolts project, has always stated that comets, as well as asteroids and meteoroids, were electrically excavated from planetary surfaces. The desiccated, rocky, rubble-strewn, and complexly layered 67P nucleus are all the predicted features of the electric comet theory. In countless 67P images, we see what can only be described as planetary features. We see stunning evidence for stratification, a geological process that is found in most sedimentary rocks, and is thought to result from eons of wind and water erosion. Of course, such layered rock material was never expected by comet scientists. A so-called snowball of ice and dust that is thought to lose surface material through sublimation of volatiles and outgassing has no business showing features that appear indistinguishable from canyons and cliff faces in the American Southwest. These undeniably planetary features on a comet mark an extraordinary success for the electric comet theory, but with no acknowledgement to date from official science. If any doubt had remained about the dire need for astronomers to entertain radically new theories of comet origins, the discovery of stratified rock on a comet surely underscores the urgency. In our next episode, we will continue to explore these game-changing discoveries, including the electric universe interpretation of comet activity at 16 astronomical units. And we will address the questions of comet density and comet water production, lingering obstacles for scientists who still see comets as dirty snowballs. In conclusion, we pose the oft-asked question, is science self-corrective? As we ponder this question, look at the pictures. The NASA Space Agency still describes bodies such as these as, quote, snowballs of ice and dust. Look at the pictures. Let us entertain for a moment that these distinctly planetary features exist on a comet because the comet was torn from a planet. Look at the pictures, and let us consider the world of new and exhilarating possibilities that await in the electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. On this series, we are presenting what we consider the 10 most compelling and clear-cut reasons why electromagnetism is the force that rules the cosmos. This exercise provides an invaluable opportunity to juxtapose the theoretical predictions and explanations of standard cosmology versus those of the electric universe. In our first two episodes, we explored the significance of pervasive, vast cosmic magnetic fields and filamentary cosmic structures, respectively, neither of which are predicted or explained by gravity-centric cosmology, but they are expected features of an electric universe. In fact, at all scales throughout the cosmos, both the structures and energies of the most stupendous phenomena reveal an underlying cause that continues to elude space scientists. Today, we explore why spectacular emissions across unimaginable cosmic distances are the third of 10 reasons why the universe is electric. Cosmic jets. It is a mystery that space science must openly confront. What force is capable of producing high-energy jets spanning not millions of miles, but many light-years across the cosmos? What confines the jets to narrow streams across cosmic distances? And what prevents the so-called streams of gas from dispersing in the, quote, vacuum of space? These questions are posed by the discovery of Herbig-Haro objects, or jetted stars, which have sometimes been characterized as, quote, cosmic tornadoes. The image on your screen appeared as the astronomy picture of the day in 2006. The stellar jet of Herbig-Haro 4950 was detected at the incredible velocity of 100 kilometers per second. The caption of the APOD, entitled Cosmic Tornado, reads as follows. Though such energetic outflows are well known to be associated with the formation of young stars, the exact cause of the spiraling structures apparent in this case is still mysterious. Of course, terms like tornado and outflow are derived from the familiar behaviors of wind and water on our own rocky planet. But how could such terminology be applicable to the behaviors of, quote, gases in a vacuum? The inappropriateness of the analogy is highlighted in the scientific paper, The Formation of Stars and Solar Systems. It states, stellar jets are analogous to giant lawn sprinklers. Whether a sprinkler whirls, pulses, or oscillates, it offers insights into how its tiny mechanism works. Likewise, stellar jets, billions or trillions of miles long, offer some clues as to what's happening close into the star, at scales of only millions of miles. Material either at or near the star is heated and blasted into space, where it travels for billions of miles before colliding with interstellar material. This explanation raises more than one fatal objection. It begs the question, if one were to turn on a, quote, lawn sprinkler in space, what would happen to the stream of water? The aforementioned paper acknowledges the problem by asking the following question. Why are jets so narrow? The Hubble pictures increase the mystery as to how jets are confined into a thin beam. Of course, heat alone does not explain the ejection and confinement of the jetted material. Discussing the jet of Herbig-Haro 111, the aforementioned paper admits that a disk around the star, which is supposed to provide the, quote, nozzle from which the theoretical lawn sprinkler emanates, is not evident in this image. The authors then entertain a rarely considered possibility. They state, one theoretical possibility is that magnetic fields in the disk might focus the gas into narrow beams, but there is as yet no direct observational evidence that magnetic fields are important. We note that this statement was published more than a decade ago. And as we outlined in the first episode of this series, even in the last 10 years, space scientists have had no choice but to much more freely acknowledge the pervasive, vast cosmic magnetic fields. A dramatic recent example of this is the magnetic field scientists have detected associated with the Magellanica Bridge, a thread-like filament stretching an astounding 75,000 light-years and connecting the small and large Magellanic Clouds. One of the researchers said of the finding, not only are entire galaxies magnetic, but the faint, delicate threads joining galaxies are magnetic too. Everywhere we look in the sky, we find magnetism. Jane Kaczmarek of the University of Sydney said of the finding, "In general, we don't know how such vast magnetic fields are generated, nor how these large-scale magnetic fields affect galaxy formation and evolution. Just as electric currents sustain and confine the vast filament connecting the small and large Magellanic Clouds, it is electric currents flowing through plasma that produce the extraordinary structure and energies of the Herbig-Haro jets." An ongoing astronomical mystery is both the beaded structure and, quote, kinkiness of stellar jets. Of course, as plasma physicists will attest, beading and kink instabilities are two of the most easily recognized features of electrical discharges in plasma. In fact, as we turn our attention to an even greater scale, to the spectacular cosmic jets seen emanating from galaxies, we see the perhaps inevitable confirmation of the jet's electrical nature. In 2011, a team of scientists, including radio astronomer Philip Kronberg, measured the electrical current in the jet shooting from the galaxy 3C 303. The New Scientist headline, "Universe's Highest Electric Current Found," states of the finding, "A cosmic jet 2 billion light-years away is carrying the highest electric current ever seen, 10 to the 18th power amps, equivalent to 1 trillion bolts of lightning." Philip Kronberg of the University of Toronto in Canada and colleagues measured the alignment of radio waves around a galaxy called 3C 303, which has a giant jet of matter shooting from its core. They saw a sudden change in the wave's alignment coinciding with the jet. "This is an unambiguous signature of a current," says Kronberg. Unfortunately, the team of scientists can only conclude that a black hole produces magnetic fields which then generate the current. But more recently, the study of cosmic jets at the vastest scale has provided findings that can only be described as fatal for this theory. In 2016, astronomers reported a finding that will never be reconciled with conventional black hole theory. A Royal Astronomical Society press release states of the finding, "Supermassive black holes in a region of the distant universe are all spitting out radio jets in the same direction." A lead investigator, Professor Ramil Dave, writes, "This is not obviously expected based on our current understanding of cosmology. It's a bizarre finding." As noted by Professor Andrew Russ Taylor, these black holes don't know about each other or have any way of exchanging information or influencing each other directly over such vast scales. In the electric universe, it is not black holes at the centers of galaxies which are responsible for the observed energies and mass. Rather, the plasma discharge phenomenon called a Z-pinch creates plasmoids at the cores of galaxies. As the plasmoid's charge density increases, it creates the well-known plasma feature called a double layer, which can explode or release energy in the form of cosmic jets and other spectacular emissions. As we explained in the previous episode, plasma scientists have provided persuasive experimental proof for the dominant role of electromagnetism in influencing the structure and rotation of galaxies. In the electric universe, space across the vastest cosmic distances has a substructure of electrical potential, typically extremely subtle at any point, but sufficient to affect cosmic directionality. Both stars and galaxies occur like pearls on a string, revealing a filamentary or even cellular structure to the universe at unfathomable scales. Plasma physicists have demonstrated experimentally that plasma discharges can be scaled up to 14 orders of magnitude. In fact, the Nobel Prize winner, the father of plasma cosmology, Hannes Alfvén, proposed that plasma phenomena could be scaled up to an incredible 28 orders of magnitude. As we will continue to demonstrate in our following episode, standard astrophysics will never successfully explain the most stupendous electromagnetic events in the cosmos through theoretical models in which electricity doesn't cause anything. The breathtaking form and energies of cosmic jets are yet another of countless reminders that we live in an electric universe. For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. In the first of this two-part episode, our guest Ben Davidson